I'm a reader of letters to the editor, and it gives me a sense of how people are thinking and feeling about the matters of the day. And after the special session was called, I found only 4 letters in the newspaper, and they made the following points. One said, this woman from Bloomington, "It's hypocritical to accept aid for floods, but not health care. Like those who were evacuated from their homes to escape the rushing floodwaters, the uninsured and underinsured are facing this sort of disaster each and every day. This recent flood relief is paid by the federal government, which is really each and every taxpayer in the United States. Because when it comes down to it, how is having a pre-existing condition any different than having your house and livelihood destroyed by a flood?" Another reader, this one from Grand Rapids, Minnesota, talked about farmers who use effective draining mechanisms in all the river systems. Because farmers in the watersheds have worked diligently year after year to get water off their farms as quickly as possible with ditching and pop-up drains that are very efficient. The field that has water standing in it this week will be dry in 2 weeks. And then this writer points out, it does mean cities downstream get flooded, but of course the federal government will pick up the tab. A gentleman from Shorewood points out the frequency with which these 100-year floods are now coming, and wonders one might be led to believe that flood insurance might be a wise investment unless you live on the top of a mountain. And finally, a woman from Oakdale who addresses those who are talking about too much government. And she hopes that they won't be asking for this aid from FEMA, that they will refuse it because, of course, they don't need government interference in their lives. I mention these other good people of Minnesota because I think it needs to be said today that spending for flood damage is as controversial as any other government spending. It is as controversial as any other government spending. One can find reasons to do it and fault about it. And certainly in the midst of this, we don't want to leave the implication that this spending is more noble, that my spending is appropriate and yours is irresponsible. So the public is wondering, why can we accept money for this but not for health care, not for a health care disaster? Why do we rush to spend cash on this when we have no cash? Some members have advocated in preparation for today that government needs to respond to this need quickly and that we must limit ourselves only to this need. I observe that some of those members have consistently voted no on all other public infrastructure that has been provided equitably around the state and have even criticized that infrastructure spending. I'm torn on this bill. If you look at my voting record, you know that I enthusiastically support state partnership with local communities in restoring local economies. I like to write that kind of bill and argue for it. But right now, the bill I wrote last session, in which we invested in public infrastructure equitably across the entire state in a bonding bill, is under attack in the campaigns going on. This special session just happens to fall in the midst of this campaign. Candidates who voted for the bonding bill are the subject of slimy attack ads right now. I suspect some of them are even running as we speak. And those ads single out for ridicule some of the projects in that bill, even though, by the way, those projects were ultimately signed by the governor. This bill before us today says we believe it is appropriate for the state to partner with local communities If all we do is rebuild infrastructure ruined by floods, Minnesota will be a sorry state. And so I would urge us, in the context of coming together around this real need, to move beyond partisan attacks when it comes to infrastructure. I learned from Representative Leader that for many, many years, for example, transportation was never a partisan issue. Infrastructure is so vital to get us to the next stage in terms of a healthy state. We have simply not got the luxury to have partisan attacks around infrastructure. Let's learn from this. Now, I can tell you, I actually came here today to vote no, and I talked to many of my constituents and discussed this. I have to say that I was converted. I have great respect for the chief author, Representative Kapp, who presented, I think, a very calm, rational argument today about this particular need. And Representative Fritz, by the way, in those phone calls to me where she described the failure, the flooding of this, the sewer system that was filling the basements in people's homes, they were fairly graphic. And so it brings me back to where my heart is. I believe in a role for government. I believe it is appropriate for the state to partner with local communities to build the state's economy. And so within that context, I can again vote yes on this bill.